Hello again. All right, we are starting chapter 2 in business math this week. So chapter 2 is called net income. So it's all going to be about calculating taxes and going from gross income to net income. So lesson 2.1 is about federal income tax. They're going to start writing this one as FIT, which they show us here. So it's going to come up quite a bit. It's just going to say what is your FIT, and that means federal income tax. Okay. So make sure you're reading through the book, you're paying attention to the examples and the formulas that they give you in there. Definitely important. I say this in every video. Don't just skip straight to the worksheet and hope that you're getting enough from the worksheet, because sometimes it's just not going to be enough. You're definitely going to need that book work to help you get through these problems. So they always give us kind of a summary here, and then they usually give us a formula, but in this case, they do not. So, oh darn, that's one thing I did forget. I'll have to pull up the book here in just a moment, because we are going to need the book for part of this. So I'll open it really quick just so that it's kind of ready to go. So as this is opening, I'll go ahead and read. So it says, employers are required by law to withhold a certain amount of your pay for federal income tax. FIT. The Internal Revenue Service provides employers with tables that show how much money to withhold. The amount withheld depends on your income, marital status, and withholding allowances. You may claim one allowance for yourself and one for your spouse if you are married. You may claim additional allowances for any others you support. Some companies use a percentage method instead of tax tables to compute the income tax to be withheld. So we'll actually look at the percentage method, I believe, in section 2. Yes, so I believe that's what that one's working on in section 2. For this one, we're going to use the tables. The only bad thing is they tell us, for problems 1 through 4, we're going to use the tables on pages 311 to 314. That's wrong. It's not on those pages. It is on A1 to A5. And A stands for appendix. It's at the back of the book. So make sure that's an oops on their part. It's not on pages 311 to 314. So I'm actually going to bring this over. You can see that this, from the Google Classroom, there's materials at the top, so you can always get to your SRGs here, but there's also the textbook right here. So if you click on this link, it opens up a new tab here, because I already opened it, and appendix is right here at the top. So you can view the appendix right here. It's not the best scan, but it'll be good enough to get through what we need here today. So this is what we need. So this is A1, I believe. So it's just kind of the table of contents for the appendix. And then we're going to go through. So this says single person's weekly payroll period. And then we have all these amounts going down the side. And I'll explain, what all this means in a moment. But we have 2 pages here for single. And then we have 2 pages for married. So you need to pay attention if they're telling you married or single. That's going to change our calculations here. So I'm going to move this over just for a moment so it's out of our way. And let's read problem number 1. So Beverly Hibbs earns $683 a week. So I know how much she earns every week. She is single and she claims 2 allowances. So allowances are basically things that we take off of our gross income. They're not taxed. So they kind of take them away, and it makes our taxes a little lower. So what is withheld weekly for federal income tax? We're not going to calculate anything here. We're going to use the tables. So I'm going to come over to my fun tables here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit more of the numbers here. So it told us that she was single. So we want to be on the ones that say single. So either the first page or the second page of these. When you open it, it's the textbook. It's 2 pages of single like this, and then you go to the next page, it's 2 pages of married. So just make sure you're paying attention to the top. Does it say single or married right here? And we're going to go down. So her amount was $683. So if you notice, this says at least. So if wages are at least this much, but less than this much, so we need to figure out which little range does it fit in. And they split these up into groups of 5 just to kind of make it a little easier for us to track with our eyes. But we're going to go down. So, well, this stops at 600 on this page, so it tells me I need to keep going to the next page. So I'm going to keep going. And I'm not sure why they had the one in red and the one in black ink. I'm not sure. because the next pages are also in black there. So it may be just starting out, but I'm not quite sure why that page is pink and the other ones are not. Kind of a silly design thing on their part, because they don't truly explain that. So 680, we want to go down here. So we have here 680 and 690. So 683 is between these two numbers. So this is the row we want. And I know this one's it's got a little whoopee in it because it was copied from the book. So we want to go over this first one. If she had 0 allowances, it would be $92. If she had 1 allowance, and I'm getting the allowances from up here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, this is the allowance section. So we go back to this column. So my 0 allowance column is 92. 1 would be 78. 2 would be 68. So she's going to have $68 withheld from her check each week. So we just write $68 on the line here. So it's all just about reading that chart. Make sure you go down that first column, figure out where it's between, and then you go across and you stop up on the allowances row or column, sorry. You stop on the right one. So it'll tell you in here what it's looking for. So Rebecca earns this much as a manager. She is married. She claims 1 allowance last year. She hopes to receive a refund on her next tax return by claiming no allowances this year. How much more in withholdings will be deducted from her weekly allowances? So this one's asking you something a little different. We still have to calculate, or not calculate, but find these amounts, but it's asking us to do something a little different. So we know she's married. It said married, so we need to make sure we don't want the single one. We're going to go to the married one. So here's married. That's the first page of married. We're going to go down to 427. So we go down, here's 420 to 430. That's my range I want. It's in between here. And right now, she claims 1 allowance. And I know you can't see the top there, but remember the first row after the income, this is 0 allowances. This is 1 allowance. So right now, she pays $21. So I'm going to say $21 last year, right? Because this year, she wants to claim no allowances. So we're still in that same column, the 420 to 430, but now we're going to go to this one right here, 27. So if she claims no allowances, she'll be paying $27 every week. So this year, that's what she's planning to do. Neither one of these is the answer. They're asking us how much more will be withheld. So there was 21 being withheld. Now there's 27 being withheld. So $6 more. So 6 more will be withheld every week. And then she'll potentially get her tax return there based on that amount. So the next ones, wanted to see if there's anything to note. So you're going to do the exact same thing on this next one here. You are single and claim 1 allowance. You presently earn this much money. Starting next week, you will receive a 5% increase in the pay, and you will earn. But really, you don't have to do any calculation. They already told you what you're going to be making. So they gave you extra information there. You don't really need to know the 5% increase. They could have just said, next week you're going to be receiving an increase in your pay, and your pay will now be $546. We didn't need to know it was 5%. They just told us that. So we were getting this much. Now we're getting this much. How much more will be withheld? So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to find on the table how much was being withheld, how much is now being withheld, and then how much more. Remember, that's what they're asking you. How much more? Okay. This next one, it says that this person, so Nico, is presently earning this much per week. He claims himself and his mother as an allowance, and he is single. He is to get a new job classification, which will result in a 15% increase in his pay. They're not telling us how much it is. So we do have to calculate this one. And after, he also plans to get married. After he's married, he will claim himself, his wife, and his mother. So he had 2 allowances before, and he was single. Now he's going to have 3 allowances allowances. I can spell that. I forgot the C there too. So now he's going to have 3 allowances and he's going to be married. So different charts on those two. Make sure you're paying attention to which chart you're using. And then you say how much less will be withheld weekly for federal income tax. So because he's going to be claiming more allowances, one more allowance, and he's going to the married chart, there's going to be less withheld from his checks. So he's going to be getting a little bit more on his checks now. So now we want to know how much less will be deducted. So you still have to calculate both, or not calculate, find both on the chart and then subtract. This time it's going to be how much less. I do believe, and this is more of a teacher note, so if you're looking at this with your teacher and you notice the answer doesn't match up with what you calculated, I do believe they forgot to change the allowances from 2 to 3 in the second one here, because it's the only way that you get the same answer as they're asking for. So in the end, it should be a bit more. I don't want to give you the answer there because I want you to go through and calculate it and find it on the charts, but it's not going to quite match their answer. So I can tell you it's going to be 17 for the answer, not the answer that's on the answer key, because I do believe they forgot to change it from 2 allowances to 3 allowances. So even authors make mistakes. It happens. So make sure you go through. I never want to just see, 17 on the line. We should get to see some work down below. So you should, when he was single, how much was he paying with 2 allowances? When he was married, how much was he paying with the 3 allowances? And then show me the subtraction there so that we can see how we get this 17. That's just, it's an oops on the author's part there. All right, so let's look at page number 2 here. Oh, here's the percentages. Okay, so it is section 1, where they were doing the percentages here. So instead of using the tables this time for problems 5 through 8, so make sure you're paying attention to those directions, use the table to find the amount withheld. So percentage method of withholding for a single person. They're not bothering to do this for a married person, it's just for a single person. Each weekly allowance is $63.46. They're telling you if you claim 1 allowance, you're going to subtract $63.46 from your gross income before calculating the taxes. If you claim 2, you need to multiply 63.46 times 2 and subtract that from your gross income before calculating taxes, and so on. So they're telling you how much each allowance is worth. That's how you know what to subtract. Once you've done that, then you go through and you do this calculation for the percentage method. So Matt Jones' gross pay for this week is $560. He is single and claims 3 allowances. And everybody's going to be single for these next couple problems because that's the chart they give you. So they're not going to be married on these ones. Using the percentage method of withholding, what amount would be withheld from Matt's pay for federal income tax? So first, we need to deal with his allowances, right? So we have $560, and we need to subtract his 3 allowances. So it's 3 times the $63.46. So he gets to take $63.46 away 3 times before we calculate the taxes. So we end up with, if you calculate this out, and I think I just did it as, one calculation. I just kind of typed it in my calculator this way. So I ended up with $369.62. So this is his taxable income. So now what we need to do is figure out where does this fit in the chart. So it's 51 to 195. Well, it's definitely over that. So let's go to the next one, 195 to 645. Okay, this is where we fit. It's in between these 2 numbers. So we know we're going to use this rule right here. Okay, so it's 1440 plus 15% of the excess over 195. Well, what does that mean? That means anything over 195, which is the beginning number here, gets a little bit, we have to multiply by a percentage. It's not just a flat fee of 1440. So if it's 195, we would pay 1440 and we'd be done. But if it's 196, we have to pay the 1440 plus 15% of that $1 extra. So in this case, it's a little bit more than just $1 extra. We have $195, and I like to break this up into the graduated pieces. So we have $195 plus, and it's going to be $174.62. So all I did to get the $174.62 is I subtracted $195 from $369.62. That way I know what is the excess over $195. That's all I did. I just subtracted. So I just broke this piece, this number here, into the two pieces I need. So remember, this one automatically gets the $14.40. That does not look like a 14. $14.40. So this automatically gets $14.40. That's how much I'm going to pay. This one, I have to multiply by 15% to know how much I'm paying on this piece. So $174.62 times 15%, and we get $26. And it's 193. You can always just round it to 26.19. And I need to add those two together. And that's going to tell me how much I'm paying total. Or how much Matt is paying total. Sorry, not me. I always say me. But, so he's going to pay $40.59 each week in federal income taxes based on this chart. So first, take away your allowances if you have some, and then start breaking it into the pieces. You need to figure out which one it fits in, though, before you just start multiplying. So our number fit in here, but it's more than 195. So I have to do this extra little piece for it. I have to, what is over 195, and I have to multiply that by 15%. So a little bit more work on this page than there was on that first page where we just had to go to the chart and look it up there. So exact same thing happening on this next one, except we're going to change the amount. So they're going to have you compare it. So last week, Yancey works as a part-time sales assistant, and last week he earned $240. This week he earned $325. Yancey is single and he claims 2 allowances. Using the percentage method, how much more will be withheld this week for federal income tax? So you're going to have to do this calculation for both of these. One for the 240, one for the 325. And then figure out how much more, meaning subtract the 2 amounts that you got. So I'm not looking for how much he's paying last week and how much he's paying this week. I'm looking for the difference. How much more is he paying this week than he did last week for federal income tax? Make sure you subtract your allowances before you start calculating. So 240 minus 63.46 times 2. There's 2 of them. Then start calculating your allowance. Figure out where it fits in here. And then 325, you're going to do the same thing. 325 minus 63.46 times 2. There's still 2 allowances. And then start calculating where does it fit in this table. But that's the only difference is they want a how much more on that one. Let's see, for the next one, number 7. So the only thing on number 7 that I can see that's a little different is that, so it's back to you. You are a marketing manager for Pointer Plumbing. You are earning an annual salary of $41,600. You are single, claim 3 allowances, use the percentage method. What amount is withheld from your weekly federal income tax? So make sure on this one, the only difference is that you're being given your annual salary, and this one is a percentage method for weekly taxable income. So we need to bring it down to weekly. So we're going to have to do this divided by 52. And that's the number that we're going to use to subtract allowances from and then start using the chart to calculate our federal income tax. So make sure first to divide it down by 52, and it's 52 because there's 52 weeks in a year. This is when I've had students do 48 because they go 4 weeks in a month. 4 times 12 is 48. I've had so many students do that. Months, we average them as 4 weeks. It's said very often, there's 4 weeks to a month, but that's not really true. It's a little bit more than that. There's actually 52 weeks in a year, not 48. So a little off on the 48 there. You'll get the wrong answer if you do 48. So make sure you do 52. Sorry. All right, let's take a look at the algebra one here. So we can end this one because this one's a little bit longer. Sorry, a lot going on this one. Remember the algebra one? Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be hard. It just means we need to think about it. How do we use what we know to get what we're being asked to get? So we're asked to apply it a little bit deeper here. So Aretha Foster is single. She is marketing director for the Canterbury Community, a senior living center. Do we really need to know all that? No. But single, again, we know she's going to be single because it's part of this table, but that's important. We should be paying attention to that. She is paid a weekly salary of $735. If her federal income tax withholding is $66.84, find the number of withholding allowances she claims if the tax is computed using the percentage method. So now we're being given the tax withheld and her weekly salary, but we don't know how many allowances she claimed. So we're trying to go back and figure that out. So find the number of withholdings. So number of withholdings will be, we just pick a variable. Now that we know what we're missing, we just pick a variable for it. So we're going to let that be n for number, right? And then we also know that her federal income tax, the amount she pays every week, is calculated based, exactly how we've done these last few. We have her amount. So let's see. This is her gross. So I'm going to say gross amount. So her gross pay minus her allowances, which we don't know the number of allowances. So I'll go like this. Number of trying to shorthand this a little bit, times the 6346. Remember, that hasn't changed, 6346. So however many allowances she's claiming, she's still going to multiply that by 6346. So we know it's the gross amount minus the allowances. And then we also, once we know this, we have to break it up into the two pieces of where does it fit into the chart here. So with this one, we want to go, let's see. I want to make sure that I'm explaining this nicely. Oh, okay. I'm being silly. I was worried a little bit where we would be. So we can calculate this already. So we're partially, we can calculate it already. $734 or $35. We know it's going to fit in either the first or the second column. If she even subtracts a single allowance, she'll be down here in this column here. So, well, close to it anyway. So we're going to assume that she's doing more than one allowance. That's the only thing here, is that you're going to make that assumption that it's going to be more than one. And you can kind of calculate it on both, but we're going to make the assumption that she's here in the middle and she's made more than one allowance. We don't know how many more, so it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4. I think you can go all the way up to 9, I believe, for actually calculating your taxes. But I'm going to move this down a little bit so I have some more room here. All right, so we're going to assume that she's in this bracket here. So she's going to, her gross income, or not gross income, sorry, this total amount is going to be divided up into the two pieces. She's automatically going to pay the $1,440, right? So we already know that she's going to pay $1,440. And then she's also going to pay 15% of anything above $1,440. So this is going to start to get a little bit complicated writing it with words. So I'm going to start writing it out in numbers just so that we have some of this written out. So her gross amount is $735. But we're going to subtract her number of allowance. Remember, we're writing n for that, times 6346. And then we also have to do this kind of extra subtraction for the 195, because this is the portion that's going to get the 15%. So it's above the 195. Remember, that's the excess of 195. So it does get a little bit funky looking there. And then we are automatically going to add the 1440 because that's the automatic. If you're above 195, you're going to pay 1440. And this is going to equal the 6684. So a little bit more complicated writing that out because we have this kind of extra bracket system here. So what we want to do is start combining like terms, and really this parenthesis was just to show you that this is her income, her taxable income. So the parentheses aren't really necessary. We can start combining like terms here, and we can add these two together, and we will get 540 minus, and I'm going to put the 6346, and like that. It's just the more proper way to write it. We're going to multiply that by 15%, because we haven't done that part yet, plus 1440 equals 6684. All right, I'm going to move this down a little bit so I have more room to write. All right, so we're going to distribute this 15% here. So 15% of 540 is $81, minus 15% of 6346 is 9.519N. And again, definitely be using a calculator on this one. I've just already got all of this written down on a paper. That's why I'm very easily able to grab it. I've already done the calculations. So again, I'm just multiplying 15% here by each number. I distributed the 15% plus 1440, not doing anything to the 1440 or the 6684, just writing it, bringing it down. Make sure you always bring the pieces down. All right, we can combine some more like terms here. So when I add these two together, let's see, I get, oh, and I skipped that one. What do I get when I add those two together? Plus 1440. All right, so we get 9540 minus 9519N equals 6684. Sorry, I had skipped straight to combining it with the other side when I wrote it down here. So now we can start solving for this N, now that we've kind of simplified both sides. Remember, this is PEMDAS, and I really hope that sounds familiar to you. Even though you're in business math, you should have heard PEMDAS at some point by now. So PEMDAS is about simplifying. You do parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division together, addition, subtraction together. So from left to right. You always go from left to right when you're doing this. After you simplified, you can actually kind of go backwards on PEMDAS. That's why we do addition and subtraction first when we're solving, and then we do multiplication, division. So we're going to subtract 9540 from both sides. Oh, why it's not grabbing all my pen strokes here. Boop. So subtracting these two, they cancel. And I bring down the negative 9.519N, and that's equals. This is going to end up a negative number here. So it's going to end up negative 28.56. It's okay. They're both negative. So the negative's going to get fixed here in just a second. She's not going to take a negative number allowances. You can't do that. But we have two negatives. So when I divide by my negative here, my negative 9.159, because that's my last step. I want to get this 9.519 away from my N. When I divide, it goes away. I have N drop down. And since I'm dividing by a negative and a negative, two negatives gives me that positive, and I end up with 3.0003. I'm going to round that, to the nearest whole number. So she took 3 allowances here. All right. I know that one was definitely more involved, a little bit more work to it than some of the other algebra ones. Always possible, just requires a little bit more thought and application of what we're learning in these processes. It also does require some algebra there, so which they nicely name it that way. All right, I hope that helped, and I will see you in section 2.